Evening, everyone. I'm Jim Gaughran, a state senator for the 5th District, and thank you for joining us at the Long Island Senate Majority Infrastructure Roundtable. Tonight's event is co-hosted by myself as chair of the Local Government Committee in the Senate and by Senator Anna Kaplan as chair of Commerce and Economic Development. We also have our colleague John Brooks joining us, Senator Brooks, and Senator Kevin Thomas will be with us shortly. This was originally supposed to be at Cold Spring Harbor's, one of Cold Spring Harbor's facilities, and I thank them for that. Unfortunately, with Omicron and changes in a lot of rules, and of course the health concerns, we made the decision to move this not to a round table, but to, I guess, little boxes and rectangles like we're all used to in the Zoom world. And hopefully we will get past this soon. The purpose of tonight's meeting is pretty much to talk about infrastructure, the record money that we're getting from the federal government, and how we in New York should be working diligently together in partnership with our local governments, with our business community, with our labor community, academia, and so many others who are a major part of what helps to make Long Island and this state move forward. And as you know, thanks to President Biden and also especially our majority leader in the U.S. Senate, Chuck Schumer, we have a record amount of money coming in for infrastructure. We see this as potentially transformative for New York State and for Long Island. The other issue is we're still trying to figure out all the rules of the road, where the money's going, how it's going to be dispersed. We know a good part of it is probably going to be coming through the state budget, including this budget. Many of it is going to go directly to municipalities, and they also go out in other forms through other state agencies, and some is going to come directly from the federal government. So the purpose of this is to get your questions, your thoughts, so that we can, fight on behalf of, all of you, because you all are really in representative capacities here, to try to see that we get the most we can for Long Island and to take advantage of this one, maybe once in a lifetime opportunity. It's estimated, now this is over 5 years, so this is going to be a long, 5-year program. New York State alone is going to get 11.6 billion federal highway aid programs, 1.9 billion for bridge replacement and repairs, 9.8 billion to improve public transportation, and 2.6 billion for clean, safe drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, infrastructure, et cetera. So there are opportunities to do things that we used to think about and dream about, I think, if we all are smart and do all this together. I do have to apologize for the large number of panelists that we have. Again, this is going to be a round table, and it's sort of got a little bit out of hand. So the senators and I have had a discussion that we thought what would be best would be we would listen to you, hear your comments, go from one panel to the next, and then at the end of this time, we'll entertain some dialogue, but we will get back to you all with specific answers to any questions, and we will also put together all your thoughts and ideas and continue this dialogue moving forward. But I think if we had a discussion after each panel, we will be here for about 5 days, and I don't even think Rich Schaefer would stay awake for 5 days. I think he only could stay awake for 4 days. So that was the decision that we made. And each panel will be unmuted one at a time, and then you'll be able to mute and unmute yourself within that panel as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce Senator Kaplan, who will introduce Senator Brooks, and then Senator Kaplan will introduce the first panel. Senator Anna Kaplan.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everyone who's here tonight. I know that you're all very busy. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule and joining us here tonight. I think my colleague, Senator Gaughran, said it best. The goal is to really for us to engage you. Some of you elected, some of you appointed, some of you running different businesses and different members, to hear from you firsthand as to what you're experiencing, what you're hearing, what are some of the issues that could help us and guide us to advocate in Albany for all of this infrastructure money that's coming in. And it's always best to really engage all of the stakeholders to find out what's important, especially here in our region in Long Island, because some of our issues are different than, let's say, downstate or upstate. We want to make sure that we deliver for Long Island. I'm grateful to have my colleagues, 5 of us, could really drive this in our conference and when we're doing these negotiations. And I think it's important for us to know and to hear from you. And that's the goal for tonight. With that, I'm going to pass it to Senator Brooks, my colleague also from the west side of Long Island.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us, and good to see all of you. I'll be real brief because we've got a lot we want to try to accomplish. I think there's some real opportunities here for us to capitalize on them, best capitalize on them. I think we have to have a lot of open communications with all of us, pick some priorities that we can collectively push for, and take advantage of these funds that have been made available to Long Island. We all know that in many areas in the island, we're facing many, many different challenges. There are funds here that can let us address some of those. There's also opportunities to explore some opportunities that are out there to expand some things. So I think this is while it's going to be difficult with all the people here, I think the opportunity for us to listen to your ideas and concerns, jot them down, have some discussion afterwards, and get back to you for some longer, more detailed discussions and collectively a development of a plan. So I thank everybody. I thank my colleagues for getting this squared away, and look forward to hearing and learning your ideas going forward. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to introduce Senator Thomas. Has he joined us? I know he was joining us just a bit later. Senator Thomas, are you on? Okay, well, we'll come back to Senator Thomas when he joins us. I also want to encourage anyone and everyone, if you would like to please go ahead and write your questions in the chat. You don't have to wait till the end of the night. Write what you would like answers to, or if there's any other suggestions that you might have moving forward. If we've passed your panel, please put all of that in the chat, and we will make sure that we'll take notice and take advantage of all those comments too. With that, I'm going to introduce the first panel, and a panel that is not strange to anyone here tonight. Matthew Cohen, Long Island Association; Mark Herbst, Long Island Contractors Association; Mitch Pally, Long Island Builders Association; and Kyle Strober, Association for Better Long Island. And if we could do it in those orders, that would be great.
Well, I guess that makes me first. Thank you, Senator Kaplan. Senator Gaughran, thanks for putting this together. Senator Brooks, thank you. Senator Thomas, thank you. And my thanks to Senator Kaminsky as well. So I know he's not on the Zoom. I'm going to be willing to guess that Mitch, Mark, Kyle, and I probably agree on 99% of what the priorities should be. I'll be quick and just tick off a few. Sewers. Always talk about it. Whatever we could do to expand sewage infrastructure on Long Island, particularly in Suffolk County. I think we have a historic opportunity here, an unprecedented opportunity to put real money into it. And we all know more sewers means more economic development, more vibrant downtowns. It's better for the business community because businesses want sewers to hook up to. They need capacity. So certainly sewer capacity. Mitch and I were actually I'll leave the app hang to you, Mitch, but more generally speaking, investments in the railroad and our transportation network. And like I said, I know Mitch has a few specific ones that he's really taken the lead on, and we support him at the LIA with that. both hubs, Nassau and Ronkonkoma hubs, whatever kind of monies we can put in to investing in the two biggest, most transformational development projects we have right now on Long Island, that would be a win. And there's parity there. You got one for Nassau and one for Suffolk. So the more money we can put into expanding the infrastructure there, the better. Particularly, I know Angie's on the phone and Angie's on the Zoom. I see Tracy. So whatever we can do to help them in Islip, and particularly the airport, and putting more money into the airport. It's such a underappreciated asset by so many people, but everyone on this Zoom knows how important the airport is. And I mean, it's really Angie and Tracy and Shelley and their team have really done such an incredible job to get it to where it is now. So imagine if they had more money to play with to make it even better. What else? You know what? I'm gonna reserve my time. I think they're right. Is that what they do in the legislature? And I will let Mitch or I forget who was second, and I'll come back if there's anything I think of that they don't say.
Mark was next. Mark, are you ready to go?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to address you and share our thoughts, and we're always available to give you more information. You represent the Senate majority, and we appreciate that. But to be completely blunt, we are quite skeptical because you fight for us, but the majority of your conference doesn't share the same interests that we have, which is Long Island. And we're concerned that we may be an afterthought in spite of all your best efforts. And so what I think we need to do to ensure that is implore and help you deal with the process. And I'm asking you to concentrate on the formulas and how formulas are based in the funding. My understanding is, as an example, the federal trust fund, the highway trust fund, 90% of that will be formula driven to make it go easy. So that says, look at the formulas and look at the basis for the formulas. In the past, there was a funding formula for capital programs for transportation that was based on the amount of lane miles and the amount of registered vehicles. And that was the funding program. And I think some guy named Mitch Pally had something to do with crafting that legislation. And what happened in 2009 is they decided to change that, and they were going for the fancy projects, the marquee projects, calling them projects of significance. So throughout the state, when they came up with that program, they gave those projects funding priority. Lo and behold, of all the projects of significance, they didn't find one on Long Island. So after they funded, I-86 upstate, and I'm not saying anything against those projects, but Long Island got shortchanged, and we lost about 10% of transportation funding. Those formulas have not been put back into place. We used to get 23%. And if you want the data, it's based on registered vehicles. Nassau County and Suffolk County are the only counties in New York State out of 62 that have more than 1 million registered vehicles. We've got the most cars. Amount of lane miles on the roads. Suffolk County is number 1 with 5,583 miles. Number 2 is Erie County, nice for them. Number 3 is Nassau County, 3,108. In addition to that, registered licensed motorists. Nassau and Suffolk County all have more than 1 million drivers. And if you look at the condition of the roads, the studies that we've done in this area shows that about 39% of the roads are in poor condition. We know those conditions. And we also have the weather that has been a major problem with that because we have such freeze thaw. Yes, there's a lot of snow in Buffalo and Rochester and Syracuse. It freezes, it stays there. We have the freeze thaw constantly having impact. And then one of my favorite charts, I don't know if you can see it, talks about congestion. Look at all the red. It's all Long Island. That's where the work is. That's what's needed. The figures, the facts are there to drive the formulas, which gives us the money. You've got to base your arguments as you go back to Albany on the formulas and develop the formulas based on the need, and Long Island would win. That's my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I agree with you. I think if we actually have those formulas, we will work and make sure that we get our share or very close to our share here in Long Island. Thank you for those points. We'll definitely we would appreciate if you could actually drop that PowerPoint or information that you have. Either email it to us or drop it on the chat for us. Mitch, you're next.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator Kaplan. Thank you, Senator Gaughran, Senator Brooks, everyone for giving us the opportunity. I agree wholeheartedly, obviously, with my friends, Mr. Cohen and Mr. Herbst, who have outlined a series of projects. Obviously, listing them in just from the context, sewers are extremely important to the housing industry. And in addition to providing economic development opportunities to build more housing and more dense housing, it provides significant environmental benefits because sewers provide the least amount of nitrogen going back into the groundwater, as shown by the Suffolk County Health Department. So we still have a number of areas in Suffolk County that need sewers or have some funds but don't have enough to get over the finish line, like Senator Gaughran and I talked about Huntington Station yesterday, which still needs $20 million to get over the finish line. There are still obviously some areas in Nassau County that don't have sewers, and they should also be prioritized because that is a combination of both the economy and the environment on Long Island being benefited by the exact same project. In addition, it will put a lot of construction workers to work for my friends in organized labor, which makes a lot of sense. That's what this money should be used for in that context. Once we get past sewers, the number one, and assuming the third track is finished this year, which we all assume so, since it has all the money necessary, and assuming East Side Access is finished this year, which has been promised by MTA for the end of this year. The number one mass transit project that is unfunded at the moment is the electrification between Ronkonkoma and Yaphank and the movement of the Yaphank train station. That one project of 15 miles does more for the east end and middle part of Suffolk County than any other project, because it will enable people to use the Yaphank station instead of going to Ronkonkoma. Ronkonkoma is overloaded from a car point of view, and it allows us to do a variety of new things, especially with second track, which has already been finished, as you know, to Ronkonkoma. So it's not just the movement of the Yaphank station, it's the electrification from Ronkonkoma to Yaphank and the movement of the station that will open up a variety of new development opportunities, including at the airport, which is essential to all of us because, as you know, most of the land at the airport now is parking spaces and more parking spaces. And that will enable us to do different things, whether it's midway crossing or, but even more importantly than that, the movement of the MacArthur Airport terminal to the north side by the train station. That will make Ronkonkoma a multimodal facility. In that context, we're building housing, as you know, across the street, and it will make Ronkonkoma the center of that kind of development in that area. From a highway perspective, obviously the Oakdale merge, as Mr. Herbst and I have talked many times, if they had done what they were supposed to do the first time, we wouldn't be going back to do it a second time. But unfortunately, when they designed it, the community and the elected officials at that time came out against what DOT wanted to do. And therefore, DOT could not do what they wanted to do. And that's why we now have a problem there and now have to go backwards and fix what was done in the 80s. In addition to that, Route 347, which is the major corridor along the North Shore of Suffolk County, one of the major areas being redeveloped along that area, needs to be accelerated because at the moment it will be finished in another 20 years. And the bridges at Nichols Road and Route 25 need to be incorporated into the project. Those are essential in that regard. And the last one I will mention, obviously Penn Station, which is not on Long Island, but is of great importance to many Long Islanders. And the governor has made that a priority in her budget, and we hope that that moves forward. I'm not so concerned about the office buildings. I'm concerned about Penn Station itself. So however we need to pay for it, we should do that in that regard. And the other two options that I think we should at least look at now, because you have money to do so, is electrification to Oyster Bay to open up that area of the railroad, and electrification from Huntington to Port Jefferson, and the movement of the train station to the west side of Route 112, and the incorporation of the yard at Lawrence Aviation. The county has made major efforts to make that happen, and all of those combined will provide finally, or almost completely, an electrified train route on Long Island and move us out of the 19th century, and especially in Oyster Bay and Port Jefferson, into the 21st century. With that, I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and be more than happy to participate as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. Senator Brooks, Gaughran, Kaplan, thank you for hosting this forum. So, you know, the bad part of going last is that everybody says the projects that you had on your list. But the good part is that John Durso can't get mad that I'm preventing him from getting to his dinner.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be short and just say this. A couple of things that my Suffolk colleagues seem to forget in Nassau. There's a critical Nassau County aqueduct between Bay Park and Cedar Creek that's in the process. The state should be as helpful as possible to see that through. The Nassau Hub, which I was shocked you guys did not bring up and omitted, but there is a lot of state support for that in Nassau County. Or did you mention it, Cone? I apologize.
Matt mentioned it.
All right, so then Matt gets that one, but I got the aqueduct. But with that, look, we are always going to be supportive when it comes to infrastructure. Both, you know, developers and labor walk hand in hand. It's important to spur economic development here on Long Island, and you know, any help we could be or any questions you have, we're readily available. That's it.
Can I just close with, I have one more thing that I failed to mention that I think is supremely important, and that's the digital divide. You know, if the pandemic's taught us a lot of things, one of which is there's a big gap between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to wireless and 5G, and there's a lot of underserved communities on our island that really need support there. And I think whatever we could do, again, now more than ever, with telehealth, remote education, the whole thing, the pandemic, whatever we could do to invest in our wireless infrastructure, I think is key as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Matt, and everybody.
Thank you.
There's a lot to digest,
Thank
and
you.
we're going to, we'll get back to you, but they are all points I think we all agree with.
And senators, what we'll do is we'll put a joint list of all the projects that we listed, just so you don't have to jot everything down.
So before I introduce the next panel, I believe Kevin Thomas, Senator Thomas, is here. Kevin?
Hey guys, how are
Yes.
you? I've been listening intently to what everyone in the first panel has said, and I'm looking forward to listening in and observing for the next couple of panels. But as the rest of the senators said, we're here to make sure Long Island gets the best of everything, and changing the formulas or getting money for our sewers and for other projects. We're here to do exactly that. All right. So thank you so much, Senator Gaughran and Senator Kaplan, for doing this roundtable.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. And now I have the honor of introducing two people well known, I think, to all of us. And I had the fortune to serve with both of them many years ago in the Suffolk County Legislature, representing the Long Island Supervisors Association. In this order, we have Islip Supervisor Angie Carpenter and Babylon Supervisor Rich Schaefer. Angie?
Well, thank you for the opportunity, senators. Thank you for hosting this. Everyone that's already spoken hit the high points that I actually put it in the chat. I'm just hoping that any projects that are funded are projects of regional significance and not pet projects. I think it's important that it really, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, as someone said earlier, to fund some things that we've talked about for years. At the top of our list, obviously, is the relocation of the terminal to the north, where it should have been to begin with, adjacent to the railroad, so that we truly have that interconnectivity between the rail and the plane, and certainly the geographic location close to the LIE and not far from Sunrise and Vets Highway makes it the perfect candidate. Sewers, 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 paving, paving, paving. I think it's absolutely a disgrace that the roads on Long Island look like they look. And when anybody from any other part of the region comes to see what our roads are like, the highway, the parkways, the on and off ramps, it's really a disgrace. So, I mean, that really has to be addressed, and water quality issues. Certainly the sewers will address a lot of that, but we need to do dredging along our coastline. Our marinas and bays are really needing that attention, and there are so many low-lying areas that need road infrastructure improvements, and the list goes on and on. So we're counting on you to carry us across the finish line and deliver these projects that we've been waiting for years for, and we stand ready to advocate and do whatever it needs to be done to make sure we do get that funding.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. Supervisor Schaefer.
Yes, thanks, Jim. Thank you to you and to Anna as the co-chairs, and thanks to the other senators joining us. I want to re-emphasize what Mark Herbst said, and I think that that's really what we need to key in on, and making sure that when this money is being divided up, that we as a region, Long Island region, and Angie and I both speak for not only the Suffolk County supervisors, but we've recently engaged with our Nassau colleagues. And so we are working together on a number of issues, and we're good lobbyists. So we will be there right by your side when you need to speak out and fight for our fair share coming back to Long Island. I'm going to be very specific. Those of you who are on the call all remember Superstorm Sandy, and I think Angie just touched on it, but I've got a very specific project that could serve as a model for all local municipalities when they are looking at how to deal with flooding and tidal inundation. We in the town of Babylon started back in 2019. We contracted with LK McLean Associates. They did a complete review of our area south of Montauk Highway to the Great South Bay. They put together a review of roadway elevations that would be required to survive a 10-year and 100-year floodplain inundation, as well as additional stormwater deficiencies. And I think I can speak for at least anybody on the South Shore, and of course, Jim, up by you on the North Shore would apply the same, where they came up with a roadmap as to how to deal with an installation of check valves, road raisings, improvements to bulkheading, all in the name of resiliency. So one of the discussions that has constantly occurred after Sandy is what do we do going forward? And a lot of Band-Aid approaches have taken place over the years. My colleagues and I have talked constantly about whether Angie's installed a pumping system in a particular area in West Islip, or John Venditto and now Joe Saladino has installed, done a couple of road raisings. We're doing one in particular, but I think we've got to approach this and utilize this money as an entire project where we can actually accomplish all of that. If we don't, and we continue to see climate change affecting the bay and the rising of the tide, we're going to end up where we're going to have to move a lot of these properties north of Montauk Highway over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And so I would put my, not to take it away anything from all the other large projects that have been mentioned. In fact, I'm jumping on the Zoom right now for the Penn Station public hearing to support that that's going on at the same time. But in this case, I'll provide the committee with this, what I call South Shore Resiliency and Emergency Preparedness Project. The cost just in the town of Babylon, not including our 3 villages, would be $87 million. And I'm sure if we had and took a look at Islip, Brookhaven, throughout the South Fork, and then included all the villages, obviously that price tag goes up. But I will put in a request also that our project is shovel ready. So I think it would go to the top of the pile, right, Mark? When you're doing contracting projects, top of the pile, because we could literally put it out the bid tomorrow and we're more than happy to accept the money. If you need me to drive to Albany next week to pick up the check, I'm available to do that as well. And then thank you again for paying very specific attention to this and fighting for us to get the money that we need.
Rich, you don't have to drive all the way up to Albany. I'll pick it up and drop it off for you.
I'll come to your house, Anna.
Sounds good. Sounds good. With that, I want to thank you both for giving us your point of view and what you think is really important. We appreciate it. I would like to introduce the next panel. We have Mayor Nora Hagenson, Mayor Edward Novak, and Mayor David Weber.
We also have Mayor Elliott Conway.
Thank you, Senator Gaughran and Senator Kaplan, for organizing this and giving us the opportunity. I'm speaking for the Village of Upper Brookville, but more importantly, along with Mayor Novak, the Nassau County village officials. I'm going to talk about projects and then formulas, but probably one of the more important transformational project is one that Mitch has already mentioned, which is electrification of the Oyster Bay line. This would be transformational for the North Shore of Long Island, take pressure off of Syosset, Hicksville, and the Ronkonkoma line, and revitalize a lot of the North Shore areas. A few years ago, the MTA, I think, estimated that would cost about $250 million, but now there's a much cheaper alternative by actually putting an electric train in with a recharger in Oyster Bay that would shuttle back and forth and switch to diesel once it hit the main line or overhead electric. So I think that should be a high priority. Earlier today, I think I sent to Senator Gaughran's office a list that was compiled last year of projects, water, stormwater, fresh drinking water, culverts, and so forth, 50 projects in Nassau, some Suffolk, that were important, sent to Assemblyman Swazi. It was in the infrastructure bill that came out of the House, but was eliminated on reconciliation. So that would be a good starting point for a lot of the water projects and water quality projects. Individual villages all have issues with roads. In our village, Mill River Road, repaving caused by the closure of Bayville Bridge and funneling the North Shore down this one village road, and culvert issues. We've got a couple of million of projects, and I think as you go around to the 62 villages in Nassau County, you'd have very similar projects like that in various sizes. Mark Herbst was talking about formulas and various formulas. We took a look at two formulas. One would be to the extent we're talking about roads, culverts, and so forth, stormwater, if you were to take the CHIPS number and just go 10 times a payment for each village of 10 times the CHIPS amount, the total for Nassau County would be about $80 million. That gets you part of the way there on many of these projects. Maybe a number more like twice that number would be more helpful for the villages. If you were to pick a second number being 10% of gross expenditures, and Mayor Novak will talk more about that, that would be about 60 million for the villages. And allocations are fairly similar for a lot of the villages. Obviously, you'd have to extend this beyond Long Island, but that gives you an idea of the order of magnitude and two useful formulas. I'll give we actually have a board meeting coming up locally, but I think Mayor Hagenson is going to, from Baxter Estates, is going to talk next. Thank you for the forum.
Thank you again, Senator Kaplan and Senator Gaughran, for organizing this. This is really an excellent opportunity to hear from everyone. We all, since we're on Long Island, we all share similar problems. And Long Island is a unique place. We are surrounded by water, as you all know. For me, and I agree totally with Mayor Conway, but for me, it really has to do with the shoreline. My village borders Manhasset Bay, and what we see is the bay is polluted. There are so many problems coming with the nitrogen that is coming through. It's going to affect our drinking water, and the bay flows into Long Island Sound. So it's not just my small village that is affected. It is all the people along Long Island. So the drinking water, the artisanal wells have a real problem. We need to address the water, the drinking water on Long Island. This is really, to me, a serious issue. And I hear about this all the time. We are very concerned about our drinking water. Just also to address the shoreline. The shoreline is eroding and it is having a severe impact on our roads. I have this issue within my own village, and the estimate that I have just to stabilize my small village is $3 million. And believe me, the shoreline there is very small, but we must do something about that because it has a severe impact on Shore Road, which has 8,000 cars a day traveling on that road. It floods in heavy rain, and in a severe storm, it floods to the extent where cars have gotten stuck in the water. So this is really a problem. So for me, I want to see stabilization of the shoreline. And again, specifically for my beach, but that's not the only thing. And to address the drinking water, which is a real problem for us. The road work that everyone else has mentioned today is vital. I mean, our roads are not in good condition. So these are the things I would like to request money for from the federal government, certainly from the state government. And I know Senator Kaplan has been working to try and get us money even before the ARPA funds came through. So I commend you for that. And those are the issues that are really affecting all of us on Long Island.
Mayor Novak?
Yes, I'll take it from here. First of all, Senators, I want to thank you all, obviously, for organizing this evening's event. I especially, of course, want to make mention, as Nora has, Senator Kaplan, your tremendous support, of course, for all the smaller constituents and villages, which you've already demonstrated on numerous occasions. Tonight, of course, we've been hearing about a real layered approach, very large gross projects that obviously would be significant to the foundational effects of everything that would go on in terms of infrastructure. I think that the first two panels certainly covered those very, very specifically. But the smaller projects at each one of the village levels, which requires the ability for each one of the leaders of those villages to tune their particular needs for their particular constituents, is also a very, very specific and necessary issue. Certainly Mayor Conway and Mayor Higginson have addressed that in terms of the specificity that's occurring here. Road pavement, stormwater abatement, sewers, transportation, all affect all of our villages, and are something that, as Mayor Conway alluded to, a formula that perhaps fits within CHIPS to address those issues that are structural to the roads and water. But then when you're looking more broadly at, as certainly Nora spoke to, our water systems are very, very, very important. And some of us actually control our own water. So for instance, in Old Westbury, we have our own water department. The ability to upgrade operating systems and continue to improve upon local water development, I think, is critical, as well as the broader infrastructure of water that we're talking about. And then there are other areas that I think become more specific in terms of looking into the 21st century that should become the responsibilities of our specific villages that harden our village assets, whether it's generators and solar backup, or electric vehicle charging stations, which is now becoming part of the flow of the 21st century approach to really utilizing recyclable energy in the vehicles and the transportation that we have. electric vehicles for police department patrol cars, the broadening of our police department intelligence and deterrence and crime prevention in LPRs and security cameras and drones. These are smaller, more detailed and granular issues that occur at the village level. And that's why I think when talking with the Village Association and Mayor Conway, we're looking also at a way of establishing some formulas for discretionary funding. So if we could have a function of discretionary funding that's related to village gross budgets, and we could also have some other hybrid of formula of funding that would allow us to really hit those detailed areas of road pavement, stormwater, sewers, things that are, I think, already in the gross sights of all the senators. It may be advantageous when we're looking at some form of formulations, a hybrid of formulas that might be applicable to the smaller villages. And that's what I think that this would be very, very helpful if the senators could look at a way of giving some control and discretion and targeting for the actual leadership of each village to try and work within the context of the problems that they're dealing with at a very granular level, while the senators and of course the associations and the supervisors are looking at the more grotesque, the grosser issues that are obviously affecting us. These are the things I think that become very pertinent for us as mayors of all of these smaller municipalities that really are interlocked as part of the whole infrastructure issue, but because they're so granular, we have to have some capacity for discretion at our own level.
Senators, on behalf of Northport Village Mayor Damon McMullen, I want to thank you for inviting me to this roundtable. Senator Kaplan, thank you for bestowing the mayor title on me. I am a trustee, but hopefully March 15th, that'll change. So we have issues that are very specific to us, obviously, but it's the same topics that have been discussed by every single person on this panel so far. I'm going to touch on the sewer projects. We're in the middle of a Phase B sewer expansion. We have the capability to expand to many, many more houses. Obviously, the funds are in short supply. Competition is tight, but our facility, luckily, we've prepared. We have the capacity to expand further. So by us expanding our sewer system, it's obviously benefiting many areas right around here, not just our village. And another project that we are just about ready to launch is harbor dredging. Again, it's been touched on by Mayor Hagenson, and this is definitely something that's going to benefit the greater towns, villages along the North Shore. One other thing that I'd like to touch base on is the stormwater mitigation. Something that we've certainly been talking about for years and years. We do have some money for that, certainly not enough. I'd like to see a little bit more money directed towards stormwater mitigation. Again, having the nitrogen trickle down to the harbor is not a good thing. If we can capture that upstream, we have the studies already available that'll show that we can capture a lot more of this and certainly clean up the waterways. So again, I want to thank you, and I'll turn it over.
Well, thank you all so much, and those are all great issues. And I know a lot of the other villages that you are in effect representing tonight have a lot of similar issues, and that's why we're here to all try to work together. So our next panel is representative of, as you know, we have some great educational institutions and scientific institutions on Long Island. And so they're represented tonight by Mike Ahrens of Stony Brook University, Chris Gobler, also of Stony Brook, David Manning from Brookhaven National Lab, Charles Prizzi from Cold Spring Harbor Lab, and Jeff Kraut from Northwell Health. So let's start with Mike Ahrens. Mike? Okay.
Well,
Maybe-
okay.
Maybe we will come
Sorry.
back. We'll
I'm
come back to
having
Mike. We'll go to
some,
Chris then.
I'm having some camera issues from a dropped laptop, so I apologize, but I think you certainly, for better or for worse, know what I look like. But senators, thank you so much for having this important roundtable. And I will be very brief before I pass off to my colleague, Professor Chris Gobler. In my conversation with the Vice President of Research here at Stony Brook about this, we feel that any efforts to gain access, to gain momentum on reaching the goals of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which I know Senator Kaminsky is not on here on this call, but he, as a sponsor, I believe would support that. So those areas could include offshore wind, energy storage, grid integration, especially any level of sustainable energy or grid integration that we can collaborate with Brookhaven National Lab, and sustainable energy. But I prefer you hear more from Professor Gobler on the issues that he's actually targeting as well for this funding.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, senators, for convening this group. I think this is very, very important. I've actually gone through this bill very carefully. Just as a reminder, Chris Gobler, professor at Stony Brook University, also the director of the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology that was founded by the state in 2015 to address water pollution issues on Long Island. And I've gone through the bill very carefully. I should mention, of course, the goal of the center is to harness science to engineer clean water solutions for the protection of public health and the environment while promoting economic development in New York. If you look at the bill, there's a whole entire section on drinking water. It has 15 subsections that I think many of which are issues that are directly relevant to Long Island. We've just heard from mayors and other individuals how important protecting clean water is and drinking water is. There's specifically initiatives, for example, on reducing lead in drinking water and looking at lead specifically in school drinking water. This is something the center can do very, very easily. And of course, we'll all agree is very important. Nobody wants to have the surprise that happened in Flint, Michigan play out on Long Island, but it's a real possibility when you think of the age of some of the infrastructure in some schools and other places. Beyond things like lead, of course, there are many other drinking water issues that need to be addressed on Long Island. That is what the center does. We've been piloting technologies that are specifically going to protect Long Islanders against some of the most dangerous contaminants that are in our drinking water. Things like 1,4-dioxane, the highest concentrations found in the country, are found on Long Island in the Bethpage plume. And also, we're all familiar with forever chemicals, PFAS compounds. And if you look at the bill, there's an entire section in there with millions of dollars to address PFAS in drinking water. That is really one of the strong points of the center, and something that I think there's at least a dozen plus sites across Long Island with plumes of PFAS. These forever chemicals are also emerging chemicals of concern. The state is expanding the number of PFAS chemicals that are going to be regulated. This is a chemical we need to be in front of to get out of our drinking water supply. We have the technologies to do that, but we need to work on applying those technologies. And the center needs to, as we've done in the past, pilot these technologies with the different water purveyors across Long Island so we can make sure that our drinking water source is as clean as possible. And then beyond drinking water, I mentioned there's 15 subsections in drinking water. If you just go to the clean water part of the bill, there's nearly 24 subsections. There are, again, many of which are relevant to Long Island, and many of which are relevant to what the Center for Clean Water Technology does. As you may know, one of the main things we seek to address at the center is wastewater. And we've heard a lot about sewering, and I'm sure there's going to be great opportunities for sewering. But recognize that for most of Suffolk County, there's 70% of the county that's not sewered. And to set up a sewer district, you need literally hundreds of millions of dollars to build that new sewage treatment plant, and then $100,000 per home to hook up each home to that plant. In many cases, a more cost-effective way to address the wastewater, really call it crisis in Suffolk County, is upgrading and installing individual on-site innovative and alternative septic systems. You can think of them as mini sewage treatment plants, but the technologies are there. Suffolk County has a plan to implement that technology, and the Center for Clean Water Technology at the university is ready to work with Suffolk County and the state to get the best technologies in the ground for up to 200,000 homes in Suffolk County to ensure that our drinking water supply going forward remains clean and clear. And the last thing I'll just say is that, again, as a university, the Center for Clean Water Technology is poised also to be able to help train the next generation of engineers and water technology individuals to help keep our water supply clean on Long Island. People in the industry will tell you this is dearly needed right now. The old guard that was in charge of, say, sewage treatment plants, water purveyors, is actually aging out. And we need to be training the next generation of people with the newest technologies to ensure we have clean water for Long Islanders going forward. And at the university, the Center for Clean Water Technology is ready to do that. So with that being said, I thank you for calling this meeting and thank you for allowing me to talk about the bill.
Thanks so much, Chris. Our next speaker is David Manning from Brookhaven National Lab.
Thank you, Senator and Senators. And that's a great segue, Professor, because I have with me from B&L, I've got Scott Bronson. Scott is not only a scientist, but is also, he leads our educational program. So Scott is not only an educator and a scientist, but his focus is attracting and keeping the best and the brightest and the future young people. And that, of course, is an absolutely key priority for Senator Gaughran and Senator Kaplan. Just quickly, Senators, what I would suggest is a lot of our focus at the laboratory is going to be accommodating or maintaining, the transition, the energy transition that's taking place on Long Island. We got 9 gigawatts of offshore wind. We have a tremendous interest now in the electrification of transportation, but we are not where we need to be in terms of energy storage. So there's really phenomenal work going on in battery storage going on between Stony Brook and B&L. Esther Takeuchi, who leads that program, some of you may know, she actually, if you have an implanted defibrillator, this is a little machine that actually monitors your heart for a decade. And when needed, when the heart stops, delivers a jolt 1,000,000 times the power of a pacemaker. The woman who invented that battery and has 24 patents on it is Esther. So Esther teaches at Stony Brook and is also a scientist at B&L. So how we develop this next generation of grid level storage so that we can maintain and develop renewables and serve this new market, that's a key focus at the lab. Number 2, I would just mention quickly that in terms of infrastructure, the most significant investment, or one of the major investments on Long Island going forward, is our electron ion collider. With the good efforts of the senators, the state has contributed $100 million to the infrastructure needed to develop that project, which is leveraging a multi-billion-dollar investment at the lab. So this collider, which will be world-class, the only one of its kind in the world, is about 10 years of development. It's in the design phase now, and then goes about 20 years of operating. And this will allow us to take basically 3D photographs of the internals of the nucleus. We'll be able to learn more about the big things by understanding the small things. My final note before I punt to Scott is just the train station. A lot of help again from the state, because the Yaphank rail station is dramatically underutilized. By moving that to the lab, you would not only have a station right at the laboratory, which is right by this massive development going on in the whole Camp Upton area, the AVR properties, etc., but it would also relieve a tremendous amount of congestion from Ronkonkoma, which is also an opportunity for redevelopment. Scott, did you want to just touch quickly on what we're doing to bring in these students and maintain this future?
Sure, David. I just wanted to add on top of that, for infrastructure, that we're just about ready to break ground on Scientific User Support and Visitor Center. And that's a federal commitment of about $90 million. So even though our scientific facilities have always been beyond world-class, they look like they're from another planet. Our guest visitor kind of interface has been a trailer up until this point. So we're excited about where the lab is heading. And that's really important for attracting Long Island's best and brightest into careers in STEM. And as you heard from Chris earlier, in the kind of small world, in 1989, I was a Simons Fellow at Stony Brook in Liz Cosper's lab working on the brown tide. And so these issues of water, all I can say is thank you, Chris, for keeping that work going. It's very important. Long Island has some kind of magic recipe for creating the best young scientists the nation has. We are an incubator. I have, just for the high school level, I have about 50 students coming to do independent research every summer to match Stony Brook's Simons Fellows, which is about the same size, to match Cold Spring Harbor's efforts at the DNA Learning Center. We all work together. It's kind of an amazing ecosystem. The infrastructure that everybody's talking about, I'm a Long Islander, I grew up here, is just really important for keeping good kids here and for maintaining our academic excellence that I never take for granted. Somebody mentioned the kind of digital divide. That certainly came up, and so whatever we could do to kind of have free access to Wi-Fi. Almost all of my students, and many of them are working on COVID research, by the way, high school kids in publishing. They've been doing this remotely using scientific computing resources that we have at the lab. It is impressive. And so David went through most of the infrastructure, but I wanted to mention that. The last thing I'll say is that these big experiments like the electron ion collider, which sounds like a mouthful, and it is, do lead to amazing things. The COVID vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, came from a critical discovery, the production of those out of the basement of our biology department in the 1980s. And I just want you to appreciate that kind of mixture of federal and state funds in this way. I greatly appreciate it. So I want to let the senators know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And now Charlie Prizzi, Cold Spring Harbor Lab. And again, Charlie, thank you for agreeing to host this, which apologize, we had to move it to Zoom at the last minute. But Charlie, Cold Spring Harbor Lab.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And thank you, Senator Kaplan and Senator Gaughran for hosting this. And Senator Thomas and Senator Brooks, it's good to see you. And also I want to thank Kevin Clemency for actually doing all the behind the scenes work to make this happen. So thank you very much. It was interesting. I wish I knew I could bring a scientist with me because they would say a lot more interesting things than I'm going to say. But I think I agree with Scott Bronson, who is a connector here on Long Island, being at Stony Brook, being at Cold Spring Harbor, and now being at Brookhaven. And my thoughts are more about connecting our institutions together on the scientific side, and if there's ways to do that from a capital infrastructure way, I think we should look at those things. We do a lot of work with projects with Brookhaven on biofuels for duckweed in particular, which is the smallest flowering plant. But we have a DOE grant to see how we can convert starch from that plant to oil, which we're working on right now, but also as a water filtration technique, which I think is really interesting. So if there's a way to kind of work together, expanding infrastructure in that regard, which relates to the water situation that Professor Gobler spoke about, I think it would be interesting. We're also doing a lot of work right now, as Senator Gaughran knows, in expanding our neuroscience into artificial intelligence. And we're working with Stony Brook on that. Brookhaven has a program in artificial intelligence. And if there's a way to leverage what we do here on Long Island through federal infrastructure grants to get more federal grants from the Department of Energy, from the National Science Foundation, that can expand what we do on the research side and lead to more spin-off companies, I think that's interesting. we also have a very big, the anchor man in this group is Jeff Kraut, relationship with Northwell and cancer. We're looking to expand that also in areas that they work on through their Feinstein Institute and bioelectronic medicine, which I think is really exciting, interesting, novel, and something that throughout the nation is really leading. And there's ways we can work with Cold Spring Harbor with Northwell. So my thoughts are infrastructure that can really tie these institutions together more closely. I know we have some logistics in terms of distance between us all, but I think we have a lot of really good scientists that could work together more. I think if there's ways in which we can tie in infrastructure to do that. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And now we'll introduce Jeff Kraut from Northwell Health.
I want to thank the delegation for inviting me. I'm not going to kind of repeat what my colleagues said. You know, the fact of the matter is any additional R&D that can come to the island, unfortunately, this infrastructure bill left us out. And so we're going to be on the next infrastructure bill that's tied up in the social stuff. There is the issue, though, the only money that we see kind of healthcare research that makes sense. And, you know, Kyle and Scott talked about the digital divide. I would just add one other thing. You know, this is an issue of if you're going to focus on health equity, we're going to need to deal with the digital divide in communities that are under broadbanded, don't have access, the cost of it, because the future of healthcare is absolutely tied to being technology enabled, to have monitoring of individuals, to using your iPhone or your smartphone is going to be as important as being able to see the doctor, because that's how it's going to happen in the future. So with that money, we have money. And in that money, the way the bill is written, they're going to put money in there for cyber defense, for hardening, just like we had to do after Sandy. We're going to need to harden our cyber defense capabilities within the healthcare and research environment. And those are monies that might be very helpful. And I'm going to just switch. I'm going to put on another hat here. Myself, Mike White, and others I think are on here. I'm on the Long Island Regional Planning Council. I listen to everybody talk about the capital projects. And I would just ask maybe something a little off topic, but critically important. When New York State had a Medicaid waiver and we had an $8 billion investment, several hundred million came in through the federal government for capital investment. What the state did is they fast-tracked that investment through a regulatory process. And one of the things that it would be great, obviously, to get the money that we're entitled to as far as this infrastructure bill. But I think if we do so and how you allocate that money, you should also think about plowing the road for regulatory approvals, particularly upon those with state agencies, and then dealing with local agencies to be able to use that money. Because that is probably one of the more frustrating things when we do get money, is the ability to spend it. So I'll make it short and leave it at there.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Next panel is Mr. Reed Garten, New York Solar, Greg Sachs, Empower Solar, David Sheeran, Empower Solar, and Fred Zalkman, New York Offshore Wind Alliance.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Senators, for your time. I think we're going to just reorder our panel slightly. We're going to have David go first, then myself, and then Greg.
Hi, everyone. Senators, thank you so much. David Sheeran here. We, as a solar industry, represent about 160 different members in New York State that focus on residential, commercial, industrial, and community solar power systems. Super grateful for the senators that you champion clean energy and the solar energy community, and thank you for focusing on how to allocate all these infrastructure funds in the most efficient way. CLCPA, as we know, sets really ambitious goals for the state to hit 70% clean energy by 2030, 100% by 2040. That's clean electricity generation. Long Island today has about 5% clean energy generation. And getting to those goals is made even harder because transportation shifting to electric vehicles and also heating, so the electrification of transportation and heating increases the load target. Wind is an amazing opportunity. It's a critical statewide resource, but if you look at the planning, very small amount of that is being allocated for Long Island consumption. Solar has a very special opportunity on Long Island, distributed solar and storage especially. The Nature Conservancy did a wonderful data analysis that showed we have a potential for 19 gigawatts at commercial sites alone, and we probably have enough with residential added to that to cover all of our energy needs with distributed solar energy, which is a wonderful reality that we have. There are two sort of key pathways. There's the business and market-oriented solutions. You know, we're really focused on, of course, the business side, delivering great services to the community. That's a critical component. There's also a lot of work to do with utilities, for example, market-based rate design, which Reed will get into in a moment. But from an infrastructure spending standpoint, the utility grid itself, my colleague Rick Sachs will cover this, there's a major opportunity for us to upgrade the utility grid in a way that benefits all, that will really unlock a lot of economic potential, as well as clean air and help mitigate climate change. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Reed.
All right, there we are. Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute again. For your time and your consideration, all of our input on how to hopefully direct the infrastructure dollars that the Fed is sending to New York. You know, we share your feelings that Long Island needs to see its fair share, and that's particularly important when it comes to energy. Long Island has a particularly dirty downstate generation mix, and it needs these dollars to help modernize the grid. We have a few particular priorities that I'm going to speak to. The first is that we need to raise the state income tax credit cap for consumers who are purchasing solar systems. The current cap on the state income tax credit was set in 2006. A lot has changed, including the cost of just about everything. And, you know, it's an urgent need to raise that cap. In addition to that, to make it more LMI friendly, because it is currently a non-refundable tax credit. And we consumer
Reed, we're having some,
same tax.
Reed, you're getting cut off.
Sorry. Try changing the audio method. Hang on.
Should we come back to Reed or?
I think that's fine. I can pick up if Reed doesn't come on.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Greg Sachs. As you can see, I'm coming to you from our warehouse. David is my business partner. So this is the Empower warehouse here. But I'm really wearing two hats today. One of the key roles that I do is I'm the industry liaison for what's known as the Interconnection Technical Working Groups in New York State and on Long Island. The basic goal of the groups that I help lead is overcoming challenges associated with connecting to the grid. And across NYSEA and across the industry, you know, we have hundreds of companies, thousands of people that we employ, of course, and the ability to connect solar and energy storage projects is a critical resource and it's a privilege. But the thing is, the amount of hosting capacity, which is a term that I'll get into a little bit more, which basically is the amount of energy that you can still connect, is running out. It's a limited resource. So the basic challenge that we have here is we have these goals, but setting the goals is really just the first step. The actually figuring out how to change the infrastructure to enable like 10x the amount that we're connecting is a very challenging problem. And so, so that's basically the challenge as we have it. Now, the solutions, what are the solutions? What are we looking for? What is our ask, in terms of this? Is to identify what those infrastructure upgrades are, such as substations, such as reconductoring, such as distribution, the lines that go right to your house that enable the quality of living that we have. And then smarter solutions when you do connect. So for the various power plants. Now, DPS and NYSERDA are very aware of this problem. They do have what's known as the New York State Power Grid Study that they did. It comprised of 3 different parts. It's got a wind part, it's got a electrical part, and that's the part that we're focused on, which is the utility side of it. Now, there are some immediately actionable items, as I mentioned before, such as another option would be increasing the operating voltage at a substation, but that costs money. Who's paying for that? Increasing the operating voltage of a power line. All of these things are going to allow us to achieve these goals of, let's say, 70% renewables on the grid within the next, 5, 10, 15 years. So we need good leadership, and we need to figure out how the best way to fund this is. Granted, there will be some that's rate-based, that's a key component of it, but this is another key aspect, is those federal fundings will be a critical part of this as well.
Thank you,
That's
Greg.
all that I have. Reed, I think if you had any closing comments.
Yep, I'm back. Sorry about the audio there. Hopefully it's more stable now. Rate design is a key component. Greg, what he's saying is critical about enabling the grid to support the renewables that we need. The component that we need to focus on is to make the economics of what power cost associated with what you're paying for it and how you're paying for it. And that rate modernization is something that we're working with LIPA on, and that is a key element to achieving our goals by allowing you to really encourage storage, because we need a lot more storage in order to pair with renewables so that we can actually hit 70 and then 100% renewables on the grid. Today in the evenings and at night, we would be completely dependent on fossil fuels if we don't deploy enough storage. And deployment of storage takes rate modernization, and it takes creating the rate environment to drive the activity that we want, which is more storage paired with renewables to allow us to hit the 70% and then 100% goals.
Thank you, Reed. We pass it to Mr. Zalkman.
Yes, thank you, Senator Kaplan, Senator Gaughran, Senators Brooks and Thomas. Appreciate the invitation to be with you here tonight. For those of you who don't know, the New York Offshore Wind Alliance is a statewide organization where really a unique collaboration between the private developers, world's leading developers of offshore wind, the environmental advocacy community, as well as organized labor. And we've coalesced to support a vibrant and responsible offshore wind industry in New York. And I will say we have been tremendously successful with New York's nation-leading 9 gigawatt program by 2035. And we're seeing a lot of success, a lot of headlines lately in the news about offshore wind, a lot of momentum. For example, the South Fork Wind Farm yesterday off the coast of Montauk just received its final federal permits, and moves into construction within a matter of weeks. We just saw the announcement from the federal government the week prior that they will be doing an auction in an area called the New York Bight, which will accommodate another 7 gigawatts of offshore wind, which will be enough capacity to power 2 million homes in New York State. So a lot of a positive development. Obviously, this is a great solution to achieving New York's climate objectives. Fully half of the CLCPA goals will be met by offshore wind by 2040. And obviously in the process, creating good quality, high-paying, family-sustaining jobs. So New York and indeed Long Island has a historic opportunity really to be the epicenter of this new US-based heavy industry. Tremendous assets in Long Island, of course, close proximity to these wind energy areas. And there are really, I would say, 5 pillars of a vibrant offshore wind industry. And each of these elements actually is supported. There is buckets of funding within the federal infrastructure bill to support each of these elements. And I'll just tick them off real quickly. So first, ports and harbors. These are pieces of infrastructure assets that are utilized for the staging and pre-assembly of these offshore wind farms for construction. Massive components are ferried out from the port facilities to the actual offshore wind farm. There's tremendous funding in the infrastructure bill to support the revitalization, modernization of ports and harbors. And there are a number of these sites, obviously in Long Island, including Port Jefferson, which will be host to the operations and maintenance hub for the Ørsted Eversource projects. Secondly, is manufacturing and the supply chain. Obviously, a big goal of the development of the offshore wind industry is to bring manufacturing of these components to the US shores. And NYSERDA in the state of New York is doing a tremendous job of incentivizing the development of a homegrown manufacturing sector. Thirdly is workforce development and investment in people and training the next generation of workers for the offshore wind industry. Again, there is at Suffolk County Community College plans for a national offshore wind training center to upskill the men and women of organized labor to go to work on offshore wind facilities. And there is some funding available at the federal level to match the monies being made available by the private sector in the state. Fourthly is vessels. So as you might imagine, constructing and maintaining these systems is quite complicated, and there are some 18 different vessels that are utilized in the construction and maintenance of offshore wind. So these are multi-million-dollar investments, great opportunities for the maritime industry in Long Island to be a part of this emerging industry. And last but not least, it's already been mentioned, but more from the bulk power transmission perspective, we need to bring all this energy from the offshore wind farms and power people's homes and businesses. And to be quite honest, the LIPA grid was never really designed for power to flow in that direction from the ocean to the substations and ultimately to the point of consumption. So to meet that tremendous supply we do need additional investment in the Long Island grid. And again, there is some funding opportunities in the federal infrastructure legislation. So those are the key things. I would just say, encourage the senators to engage with the private industry, obviously with NYSERDA, to understand a little bit more at the granular level where these opportunities exist. And again, to leverage private capital and the funding that the state is already making available. So thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, our next panel, we, I think sometimes unfortunately ignore the crisis that we have on Long Island with solid waste and some of the major issues we have in practical issues with recycling, but we're fortunate to have two leaders in the industry here, and that is Will Flower of Winter Brothers and Kevin Gershowitz of Gershow Recycling. So Will, let's start with you.
Great. Senator, thanks so much. I'm very proud also to have Senator Gaughran as my hometown senator and representing us, who does a great job. Senator Brooks and Senator Kaplan, Senator Thomas, thank you so much for pulling this all together. When we talk about the funding of Long Island's infrastructure, I want to stress the importance of not forgetting about the basic infrastructures that are out there, specifically those infrastructures that are needed to keep Long Island healthy and clean. And it really doesn't get any more basic than talking about trash. The truth is there is no greater, nor is there any more important infrastructure than the system in place to manage society's garbage and recyclables. The collection, the processing, the recycling, the transportation of waste that's generated by society is critical to all of us, critically both economically as well as environmentally. Think about the enormity of the challenge that faces us. We have 2.8 million people living in Nassau and Suffolk County. Each one of us, that's all of our neighbors, every single person living on Long Island generates about 4.6 pounds per person per day. That's 13 million pounds of waste that needs to be managed every single day. Let me say that again, 13 million pounds a day, and it never stops. It's every weekday, it's the weekends, it's every holiday. The reality is that even when Long Islanders take a day off, they still continue to produce waste. And waste essentially flows from people's homes to the curb, or from a business to a collection vehicle to a processing center, and then ultimately to a disposal facility. And the infrastructure that's been built over the years is incredibly strong. Companies like Winter Brothers and others do a great job managing society's waste. But that infrastructure, as Senator Gaughran said, is going to change, and it's not going to evolve. It's going to be a revolutionary change, because in 2024, the Brookhaven landfill is going to close. And when that happens, there'll be no home for about 2.4 billion pounds of waste a year. That's about 1.2 million tons a year. When we talk about the environmental infrastructure to manage that waste, we have to talk about landfills, incinerators, transfer stations, recycling facilities. But most importantly, we need to talk about transportation. And that's where a strong rail system can help. I think it's important to note that to manage the waste that will be looking for a home when the landfill, Brookhaven landfill closes, it'll take about 60,000 trucks a year to manage that waste. So ask yourself, can the Long Island Expressway, can the Cross Bronx Expressway, can the GW Bridge handle another 60,000 trucks a year? Better yet, ask yourself if the hundreds or thousands, hundreds of thousands of commuters that are sitting in traffic, are they going to be better served by this? Can the roads withstand the punishment of another 60,000 heavy trucks pounding on those streets? Again, the piece of the infrastructure system on Long Island that needs to be strengthened is rail. It all comes down to this. In 2024, the landfill is going to close. We're in a crisis, and rail can help address the issue. It's not the only solution, but it does represent the most environmentally sound solution. and it also represents the most economically feasible solution. Moving materials on Long Island, both onto the island and off of the island, has many benefits. To reiterate, rail reduces congestion on roadways, rail saves roads, bridges from the damage of heavy trucks, rail results in cleaner air. Specifically, we get less particulate matter, less VOCs, and less greenhouse gases. And most importantly, rail is the best solution for fighting climate change. So if we really want to look at promoting and strengthening Long Island's infrastructure, we definitely need to see some of those dollars flow to the development and the management of freight by rail. I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Will. And Kevin Gershwitz.
I thank you to all the senators and everyone that put this together and everyone else that's involved for the time. And I couldn't say it much better than what Will said. From our perspective of the industry that we represent, of recycling and scrap metal, rail infrastructure is vitally important. There's been a lot of different talks of infrastructure in the last hour and a half. Those different topics are important to those that, excuse me, sorry about that, to those in those industries. For the industry that Winter Brothers and Gaughran are in, transportation is the key. It's not labor, it's not wages, it's all part of it, but transportation is where it all ends. And Long Island has some interesting challenges coming up. Brookhaven landfill has about 1.2 million tons approximately. And there's 3 proposals on the table that if all 3 are done, I believe Long Island will be in decent condition. There's a proposal in Brentwood for a transfer station to be serviced by rail. There's a proposal in Brookhaven by my company for a transfer station to be serviced by rail. And there's a proposal for Winter Brothers as well in Brookhaven and Yaphank for a transfer station to be serviced by rail. If all 3 get up and running, that will be an excess capacity of what the Brookhaven landfill takes in. That sounds wonderful, but can the rail handle it? And the same question that was asked, can the roads handle it? Can the rail handle it? And what we all need to understand is what makes Long Island unique in terms of transportation is that this is a passenger rail line. This is not a freight rail line. This rail line serves to move human beings, not TVs, not garbage, not sand, not stone, to move people. It was designed for that. It was built for that. Its infrastructure was built for that. So for example, Long Island can't really participate in intermodal transportation, not because industry doesn't want it, not because there's not money ready to be invested into it. There's lots of companies, even the Winters family, in terms of what they're doing, huge investment. Long Island can't do intermodal because intermodal generally is stacked too tall, 23 feet. Our bridges are 17 and 18 feet. So it's not physically possible. Even if you wanted to stack intermodal 1 car high, the railroad cars themselves are a special design and they can't, and they're lower to the ground and they can't clear an electrified passenger rail line. This is what makes Long Island unique in terms of that the freight, the person that, the operator of the freight division serves at the pleasure of the passenger railroad. So when the railroad comes to service Gaughran or any other customer that it has on the main line, it has a small window of opportunity. God forbid it should hold up a passenger train for 1 minute. I'm sure that all the senators on this phone call, on this Zoom call, that's the one phone call they don't want, that the passenger train was late by 1 minute because of freight. And so the NYA, the New York Atlantic, works with an extreme handicap. It moves about 33,000 carloads a year. Under the current configuration, the handicaps that it has, the time constraints that the MTA puts on it. And I don't know if there's any MTA representatives on here, but you guys stink when it comes to allowing the freight division to do its job. There's just no other way to put it. And so in the current configuration, about 40,000 carloads is the maximum capacity. That's not enough carloads for what Gershow needs to do, for what Winters needs to do, for what the facility in Brentwood needs to do. We need the Senate delegation. We need the MTA. We need the governor to loosen the strings that the MTA has over the NYA, the freight provider. Our infrastructure holdup on moving more goods by rail, and those goods are generally going to be recycled goods. We are going to be an exporter of products, not an importer. But to increase that, we need the MTA to allow more freight traffic. It's not about people investing money. There are plenty of families, companies in Long Island, outside Long Island, who are ready to invest money for this, but the infrastructure doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next panel is also a very important panel, our labor. We have Imran Ansari, Long Island Federation of Labor, Maddie Arasich, Building and Construction Trade Council of Nassau and Suffolk Counties, John Dorso, Long Island Federation of Labor, and Ryan Stanton, Long Island Federation of Labor. With that, Imran, please go ahead and start.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna pass straight over to Ryan just so we're not redundant over here from the Fed or Durso, whoever wants to go first.
Okay. John, do you want to go first or should we hand it to Ryan?
Oh, no, we'll let our new executive director say, but Matty is not able to be with us tonight. He's at a conference. He's not able to join us. And Kyle, thank you for your consideration. But do I look like I've ever missed a meal? I mean, really. Let me turn it to Ryan, who will be more than able to speak for all of us.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Senators. And Kyle, I'm probably the one you have to be concerned about missing a meal. I get grumpy. I'll jump straight to the point. A lot of the specific projects have been said. We will certainly supply the delegation with a full list identifying specific items. You know, we're aligned with the economic development organizations, the Long Island contractors, and a number of other folks that have brought up sewer infrastructure. You've heard from both the solar industry and the national offshore wind industry on the importance of transmission grid upgrades. Those are all important initiatives. I'm actually going to bring something to your attention that is not asking you to spend money. And I know that's why we're here, but the county-wide wastewater management district that Suffolk County has pursued, there's currently legislation in the governor's budget authorizing voters to have the ability to vote on the creation of that district. And that is vitally important to achieve the goals of the 50-year sub-watershed plan, which identifies a lot of the projects that we've been talking about here with regard to sewer infrastructure. So one of our top priorities would be for come the end of the budget season, that the Senate One House budget include that same authorizing language and be in alignment with the proposal that the governor's put forward at the request of Suffolk County and a number of other organizations, ours included, in support of that initiative. And then, you know, one item I will specifically identify is the balance of the Suffolk County Coastal Resiliency Initiative. So that's the sewer infrastructure projects that are already funded, already have some dollars allocated. There's a balance remaining that have left a handful of communities out. All of the approvals processes have taken place and are shovel ready. And then outside of your traditional roads, bridges, infrastructure, this goes to the issue of the digital divide. Very important to us is building out broadband, particularly for the east end of Long Island. And Suffolk County as a whole, we could hope would be modeled after Nassau County. You have two service providers. You know, of course, we have a self-interest in that one of those providers is a union provider, so you get the best skilled work, and it just so happens they provide the best service as well in terms of internet speeds for consumers, and you have choice for consumers, and that doesn't exist in Suffolk County.
So the state incentivizing the build out of broadband, that we can get into the details of what the legislative language would look like, and what some of the investments in terms of the infrastructure dollars that you have in front of you to allocate for that to make it a reality. But those would be our top priorities.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And yes, giving us the additional details on all of that is important. That's a big part of tonight's meeting. So were we all good, John and Emron and everyone?
Yeah, Ryan did a magnificent job outlining all of it as we knew he would. One of the panelists did mention the offshore wind and the number of people, and of course we're very interested in all of that. The training center that our former executive director is working on with Suffolk Community College and with the trades. So that's a very important project to us. And quite frankly, on a personal note, whatever we can do to increase and improve things at Islip MacArthur Airport, I think is really critical to our future. So, but thank you for putting this together. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, John. Okay, our next panel is a group of important Chamber of Commerce representatives and the Business Council organizations, and Eugene Aletto, YPO Long Island, Rich Pavone, Long Island Business Council, Frank Camerato Jr., Nassau Council of Chambers, Gina Coletti, Suffolk Council of Chambers, Bob Fonte, Long Island Business Council, and Michael Harrison of the Long Island Business Council. So we will start with Eugene Aletto. Eugene, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Jim, and it's nice to be included, so I appreciate that very much. The sound is okay? Great. I'm not on Long Island today. I'm here at a trade show for the first time in 2.5 years in Las Vegas, but I wanted to share with you just a little bit from a YPO business perspective. Clearly, I think this is a great opportunity for Long Island. I, as well as other business leaders, are always very concerned about competing with the New York City infrastructure requirements. We seem to struggle, as we all said. I would encourage all of you in Albany and here on Long Island, from a political perspective, that we must find a way forward to be bipartisan. This is critical that we figure out a way to work all together so that we are not choosing sides here, as we really have an opportunity to fund a lot of amazing things here on Long Island. With regards to the businesses on Long Island, what you're going to find is we like to use the shared services. We work a lot of times with Stony Brook University, Hofstra University, not only as it relates to hiring, but we've actually done an amazing job in working with those incubators at some of those universities as well. So as you think through this infrastructure bill, what I would highly recommend is not only what we need for roads and tunnels and bridges and getting transportation and water and all these things as it relates to us living here on Long Island, but I would highly recommend that we start to recognize how can we become more cohesive where we live, we eat, we drink, and we also work here. And I would ask you to just kind of think about how do we do an overlay and looking at what this infrastructure bills will do and how can it attract and make it easier to do business on Long Island as well. So it's just, I don't have anything specific in mind other than just being bipartisan, which also means by also including all the business leaders that you can, that we employ thousands of people here. And it would be great to see sort of a cohesiveness within the organization of these fundings. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Eugene, and stay safe out there with your wallet in Las Vegas. And now I'm going to introduce Bob Fonte, who I think who helped us organize this panel. And maybe Bob, I'll just let you take it over from here and speak and introduce the rest of the group.
Thank you very much, Senator Gaughran and Senator Kaplan. It's an honor, and thank you for the privilege of speaking today. So I'll be very brief. Rich Pavone and I Rich is the National Chair, I'm the Suffolk Chair of the Long Island Business Council, and we're fortunate to have with us under the umbrella of the Nassau Chambers of Commerce, Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce, and the Suffolk Alliance, Suffolk County Alliance of Chambers. So I'm just going to go straight to Michael Harrison, who's stepping in for Rich Bavone for a minute and 20 seconds. Michael?
Thanks. Infrastructure, innovation, and workforce comprise the foundation of economic capacity. And with regard to infrastructure decisions, one great way to guarantee participation by those best able to assess an infrastructure project's impact on economic capacity is exactly what you're doing today. Front-end outreach to identify worthy projects. So thank you, senators, and your hardworking staffs for assembling this initiative, and frankly, for your stamina in sticking with us through this session. I suggest there's another way to foster an optimized return on investment for infrastructure projects, and that would be to enact a statutory inclusion of diverse and community representative local and regional business leader input on each and any proposed infrastructure project that utilizes public funds or needs government approvals through an early stage industry originating economic capacity scorecard to be completed by local and regional business leaders prior to approving any such project. This will ensure meaningful input is considered that can help improve any project's ability to create, house, and transport product, house, transport, and train workforce, move messages from businesses to consumers and consumers to businesses, physically and virtually connect businesses with each other and optimize supply chains, expand export capacity, and to create and coordinate last mile, first mile, and middle miles fulfillment options for local businesses seeking to develop an online presence. We're not asking for veto power or to slow walk any project. We're merely looking to actually fast track things by guaranteeing that meaningful input from those best equipped to give the type of input that will relate to the return on investment for any infrastructure project is considered. Please consider making this a requisite component of any future infrastructure project to help ensure that optimal return on investment. Thanks very much.
And thank you, Michael. I'm just going to move over to Frank Camerano Jr., who is the president of the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce. Frank?
Yeah, am I unmuted? Hi, everyone. Thank you, senators, for hosting this roundtable. I'm the president of the Nassau Council. Our organization was created decades ago by the chambers. The chambers came together. Julie's on here too. I'll get to Julie in a second. And you know, our organization was needed to combine the resources of all the chambers in Nassau County. Nowadays is about just shy of 50, I think. We answer to, basically, really, we answer to our bosses, which are our chambers, right? That's our primary focus, is to support chambers, and its extension is to support small businesses in the communities of Nassau County, right? So, yes, like many of you said, we want money. Everybody wants money, right? But we also, because our organization included, right, is a volunteer organization. Every chamber is a volunteer organization in Nassau, right? So we have folks locally trying to help each other. Ground level, you know, grassroots kind of level. Bob uses that term too, right, Bob? So it's we need help, and we need what kind of help? Money, of course, but you know, and it could be through grants or what have you. But we also need obstacles removed, right? So I'm fortunate because I didn't think she would be available this evening. But Julie Marcasella, which is our past president of the council, among 100 other things, AKA Queen of Hearts, is on here tonight. And since she's available, I'm going to ask her to step in for me and kind of knock it over the wall. Can you do that for her, Julie?
Surely. My
Okay,
pleasure.
thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's nice to see you, all of you. Senator Kaplan, always good to see you. Senator Brooks, haven't seen you in a very long time. Nice to see you. And this is our first meeting, Senator Gaughran. Thank you for hosting all of us this evening. In reference to small businesses, we have, over the many, many years of our history, tried very often to change the definition of what is a small business with the SBA. Small businesses with fewer than 20 employees make up 89.6% of all U.S. business enterprises. And on top of that, 23 million businesses in the United States actually have no employees at all, meaning there's only an owner and sole proprietors. We as Main Street business owners with our roots on the ground miss out on many tax breaks and expansion dollars. So we are asking for your help with the federal government to change that and to make every effort to help small businesses with tax breaks. Now that COVID has really sunk in, some of us are making reinvestments into our businesses. During Sandy, we were allowed to reinvest into our businesses without paying sales tax on any purchases that were made to modify our businesses, to bring them back up to speed, to get them more active. We would request that New York State also consider no sales tax, as well as the county, no sales tax on any purchases that we make during this troubled time. We realized that there were some grants available that we were able to take advantage of, but many of us are still revitalizing our businesses in some way to give them a fresh look. So we would ask that New York State be generous and eliminate all sales tax dollars that we would be reinvesting in our businesses. And also money for Main Street. Some of our Main Streets are looking kind of tired. They haven't had revitalization programs in a number of years, and that would certainly bring people back downtown, bring into our locations, and try to just, keep our small businesses alive and active and do what we can for giving back to our communities. So through our IDAs, we'd like to take advantage of some tax cuts also, which we don't usually get on a one-on-one basis. So we would like to be considered for things of that nature so that we can expand and hopefully enjoy employing people again.
Great. Thank
Thank you
you,
very
Jen.
much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Julie. Moving along to my co-chair, Gina Coletti, Suffolk County Alliance of Chambers. Gina.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, all the senators, for allowing us to have this event tonight. I am obviously co-chair of Suffolk County Alliance of Chambers, but I also sit on the Suffolk County Downtown Revitalization Board, and I was also a member of the Long Island Solar Consortium that was mentioned earlier with the Nature Conservancy. So I have like a few obviously topics that have clearly been mentioned. Mainly when you look at it from the Suffolk Alliance of Chambers, and it's consisting of the small business owners. The biggest concern is obviously their downtowns and getting the sewers in place to enable more capacity for them to increase what if we need more restaurants, or whether it's to increase more housing. And I know that obviously they've been doing a lot around the train stations, increasing the rental apartments. So one of the things that I would suggest is when you are considering these workforce development housing, which is obviously a very needed on Long Island to try to keep the young people here, workforce housing, but when you build these new buildings, to try to also incorporate the solar aspect to that. You're putting up new buildings, and we're all talking about the need for more solar and to be a clean energy. That's something that maybe to increase that tax credit that we were discussing earlier, to include solar on these projects. But also from the small business standpoint, if you gave potential grant monies to small business owners for the potential of them training students and incorporating students and giving them opportunities at a younger age that will get them into these labor divisions that we need them in. We have so many so if you talk to the Federation of Labor, obviously, there are areas where they are being aged out that need to be addressed. And if we give some type of an incentive to these small business owners, that if they take on a student and train them, that they would get some type of a benefit to do so and keep them working, and at the same time and help the future of Long Island. The other issue from an infrastructure standpoint, I know everybody's obviously talking about the roadways, and obviously they're clearly a mess, but when you look at the downtowns, and now I'm putting on my Suffolk County Downtown Revitalization hat, a lot of the chambers/civics that have put in applications to try to get some monies to help improve their downtowns, a lot of them have now been putting in safety procedures or safety precautions at the crosswalks. And maybe when they start looking into, improving the roadways and fixing the roadways and repairing all the, the issues that they have out there, to try to incorporate that concept as well and give some funding towards the safety concerns, because they definitely are there. These downtowns are trying to come back and improve themselves and resurface and revive themselves. But at the same time, you have to consider that a lot of things have changed now that we have the pickups that are going on, instead of people, they're doing people are driving up, picking up food. Everything has completely changed since COVID. And it's just something to be cognizant of, that it is definitely a concern. We've been seeing more applications coming through for that, but there's not all that much money coming from Suffolk County. So if we could get more, it would be much, much more beneficial. That's about it. That's what I have.
Great, thank you, Gina. Finally, I just want to just recap a couple things. One of the things that we first want to thank Senator Gaughran. We've been chatting quite some time, and Senator Kaplan, I want to thank you very much for your leadership on a number of these issues and initiatives. I want to also recognize Senators Thomas and Brooks as well. We've gone up to Albany on Lobby Long Island, and some of these issues have come up before. But one of the things that we talked about a little bit tonight was charging stations and electrical charging stations and whatnot. Hydrogen is a big part of it. I know Matty Arasich is not on, but is one of his big initiatives. We're talking about that in the downtowns and the businesses there as you expand the downtowns or go into renewable energies. That's one of the areas there. Gina's talked a little bit about the numbers and asking for money. Obviously, I'm going to give you something that's budget neutral. It's something that we've been trying to pass for the last 7 years, and hopefully I think we have all the components together. Senator Kaplan, this is in your wheelhouse. It's a bill number, Senate Bill number 702. It's a small savings account for an IRA for small businesses. It's small business savings accounts. It basically, there's one thing that we've seen in this economy, especially over the last 2 years, that the pandemic has brought us together, and we're all in the same boat. We refer to it as in our business chambers as our partner, and because the government was our partner and got us through these difficult times as you're doing tonight. So we do want to recognize and thank you so much for that. But one of the bills that we're talking about is bill number 702, small business savings account. It's budget neutral. We're not asking for any money. We're just asking for an ability to save money and to be able to take it out tax-free. It's in the bill. We'd love to follow up with you on that. We know we have support from the Assembly side as well, and as well as on the Republican side in the Assembly and Senate as well. So that's something that we'd love to talk to you about and follow up with you. But discretionary funds for small businesses are very important. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity tonight. We'll follow up with an itemized list of everything we discussed today. Thank you.
Hey, Bob?
Yep.
Before you move on, if you just give me a second, I'll keep it short. As part of this, our mini panel, at the risk of repeating myself, but I will, the way to help small businesses is at the grassroots level, right? And I 1000% believe in the Chamber of Commerce system. I do. And we need everything else you folks are all talking about are so important. This working together is so important, okay? And I'm okay holding the torch on this one, I'm okay. But I can't do this on my own. I believe that whatever it takes to, to like dot our I's and cross our T's, we have to make sure that we help these small local organizations help our small businesses. Because there's a reason why when it comes to business, almost everyone's speeches they get to, whether it be the state level, the county level, or the town level, guess what always comes up? Helping chambers of commerce, right? It's like the flavor of the year, or 2 years, or 10 years, or 20 years. There's a reason for that. Because deep down, I think we all know that that's the case. But we get so wound up in these other things, which again, like I say, is so important, we forget about the little people, And at the end of the day, you guys are going to be working on these big projects, and saving the Long Island world, which is wonderful. But at the end of the day, like, my chamber was East Meadow. What about East Meadow? What about Merrick? What about the chambers out in Suffolk? But I'm going to say the chambers, I'm talking about the communities. At the end of the day, they'll have a great sewer, and the phosphates will be, in a lot better place. You can tell I don't understand that stuff. But then we walk to the communities and it's going to be the same old thing. What's going to help that, is people helping each other in these towns. And that's what Chambers is all about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Frank,
Okay.
and thank you for your passion. I hear you, but I think I've been a very big advocate for small businesses.
You have.
Myself and my colleagues worked very hard to get that $800 million grants in our budget last year. We're committed to do more. And of course, Mr. Fonte, I'm more than happy to follow up with you with regard to my Bill 702. I believe it's a great bill. I will push as hard as I possibly can. I have a lot of really great bills for small businesses, and I believe that the governor actually has put that in a lot of them in her budget. So we will certainly try to get more stuff in our one house and have them become negotiated in the budget that we end up at end of March.
Senator Kaplan, thank you very much for your leadership on this. Look forward to following up. Thank you.
Of course. With that said, we're going to go to the next panel. We have Phil Andrew, who is with African American Chamber. We have Dr. Shatil Desai, New York South Asian Chamber of Commerce. And we have Mr. Luis Vasquez, Long Island Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Andrew?
Good evening, good afternoon, good evening, Senators. Thank you for this opportunity. One of the things I wanted to say is that we don't want to forget the underserved communities. Some of the underserved communities have deserts in their community. Like it's hard to get them from Hempstead to Manhattan. So there's already talk around having some electric vehicles, some grants is in. So I think we need to look at the communities that may not be at the table. I think we also need to look at the pipeline for small businesses and all of this tremendous opportunity. And it's going to have some MWBE goals and utilization and workforce development. And I agree with the gentleman that said it's got to be a community collaboration to make it work. And I think that we have the type of chambers of commerce on Long Island that's making a tremendous difference. Just want to say, during the pandemic, we brought in $250,000 in PPP loans, and we are the only chamber of commerce on Long Island that's part of the hub and spoke SBA model to help small businesses. So I think we need to look at a pipeline, what type of services is going to be needed and what type of jobs are going to be needed, and how we can make sure the workforce in the MWBE utilization is diverse in this project. But I think it's great. It's been a great panel, and we just got to keep working together as Long Islanders.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Next, Dr. Desai.
Hi, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Senators, Senator Kaplan and Gaughran and Thomas and the entire panel for bringing this together. I represent New York South Asian Chamber of Commerce. I am a minority women-owned business owner. I have 3 businesses in the island. So I do have a vested interest in the island, and my kids are not I'm not retiring soon. So I want this island to have the best of its infrastructure because most of our employees or workers are using public transportation. For my staff to come from East Meadow to Glen Cove, it's $27 in Uber. If there was public transport system better, it would have really helped get workforce to my areas. That's one thing. Public transportation in North Shore is like a little dry area that it's hard to get to with buses at least. With again, flooding and all that kind of zones, of course, North Shore and South Shore of the flooding is a big issue. We're still just recovering hardly from the Ida, the damage from Ida. So after COVID and Corona, we go 3 steps forward and 2 steps backwards. So it's very difficult for small businesses. I represent many South Asian businesses. Within my 5 mile of radius, I have 518 businesses that are owned by South Asians, which not everyone speaks this language English. Maybe 104,000 people or more speak nothing but English. So, I mean, other languages than English. So distribution of information should be in every language as well to make it easier for others to understand especially when it's grant or fund or loans or information that would help. So thank you again for this panel and thank you for all the hard work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Mr. Vasquez?
How are you? How are you? Thank you. Happy New Year, by the way. I hope everybody's healthy, and thank you for the invite. I think it's a great panel because you get to learn more about what's happening in Long Island, and sometimes we stay out of it. But I'm glad that you included us at the Long Island Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the National on Health. One of the things I have to say is basically you cover most of it, everybody since being almost last or towards the end, is basically how do we include the Latinos and the minorities into this structure? And I think one of the things that happens a lot of times, we're always like the forgotten ones for some reason, and it's not intentional. It's just the fact that sometimes because of the agendas that are up there in the state. But I think one of the things that we do with the Long Island Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is try to make sure that whatever is happening, that we know about it, so we can let our communities know about it, so they can be more involved. So I think, even whether it's the railroad, whether it's the energy, whether it's anything, contracts, housing, we should be part of it. We like to be part of it. We like to know what's going on. We like to be part of the businesses. We like to be part of the community. We want to make sure that everything is done on that level. So I think, as I listen here, I think we look at jobs, training, education, advertising. So anything that comes out, there should be a set amount of dollars so we can be able to have to our community, whether it's the African community, the Asian community, the Latino community. Those are the communities that are handicapped at this moment. And we definitely work with the Chambers of Commerce, with LIA, so we're pretty much involved with every organization. But we always have the handicap of that funding. And people say, well, why don't the chambers? Because chambers don't. There's a misconception of chambers have money. We don't have money. We're volunteers and a lot of the small businesses, and definitely we get help by corporations, but it's just a sponsorship. It's not enough to be able to run a whole staff and be able to get and make a dent in our communities. So that's one of the things I see. I've been president for many years in the chamber, and I see that with the SBA. Those are great programs, but they just don't filter down because of the fact that some of these businesses don't qualify because of the language, because of the all the paperwork, all the funding, so there's a lot of things that we can work on and we can recommend. And I know I put a proposal in into the county, to the state, to be able to get a national chamber on health here to open up all offices so we can deal with all these issues, social issues, business issues, mental issues, health issues, and I'm working with Northwell and all the others. But with that said, I think it's a great panel. You're doing a great job, Kaplan and Gaughran and all the senators. We're very happy with your work. Hopefully you're blessed this year with many. Hopefully the pandemic doesn't go further, but it'll start coming down so we can start going full force. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to get in this involved and make sure. And I know, Senator Kaplan and Gaughran and all these other senators, I think you're doing a good job. And you guys are there and your heart is in the right place. Every time we meet, you definitely got there and you're out there fighting for us. So we're just going to continue to speak and be able to dialogue and being able to propose proposals and hopefully we'll be able to get this, the equalizer here sooner or later. But right now, I want to say thank you, and let's keep on working together as a community, and we'll definitely do well. Thank you, and Happy New Year to all.
Thank you. Before we go further, I just want to make sure that any of the chamber members and business council members, I invite you to please sign up for our emails. As the chair of Small Business and Economic Development, we do a lot of different programs, events, webinars, and we're a good source of making sure getting the word out as to what's available out there. So, and I understand with some of the businesses, language is a problem. We're more than happy to work with you and see if we can get around some of those issues that have been really very hurtful and harmful to a lot of small businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
God bless.
Okay, so last but not least is water, which, our issues, as everyone knows, on Long Island unique because we live over a sole source aquifer. And so as we move forward with infrastructure changes, we have to be well aware of that, particularly on the development side. But the state has also made a lot of changes to the regulations and the law, which has resulted in a lot of costs. But these are important changes. So we have Dennis Kelleher, the Long Island Water Conference, and then from the Suffolk County Water Authority, Jeff Zabo, Joe Picorni, and Dubois. Maybe we'll start with Dennis, and then Jeff, I'll move it to you, and then you could move it along with our friends from the Water Authority. So
thanks, Senator. And first, I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. But I also want to thank the state for the grant funding that has come to the water supplies of Long Island, most likely in the last 2 to 3 years. I've been in the water business on Long Island for the last 40 years. And things have changed drastically over the 40 years. You alluded to it. 40 years ago, we were able to just about pump the water out of the ground and deliver it right to the public. There was very little testing going on. But now, and water was very cheap, inexpensive for us to deliver, and everybody's water bills were very reasonable. But now with the testing requirements, the new testing requirements, the laboratory testing ability, where we can now test down to parts per trillion, that delivering the water that is safe to drink is a much more difficult thing. New York State, besides passing the new regulations for the emerging contaminants, most importantly, 1,4-dioxane, New York State has had a grant program which has been very helpful to the water supplies on Long Island. Through EFC and the health department, the water infrastructure improvement grants have just been a godsend for the water supplies on Long Island. Up to date, I think we've received approximately $120 million from the state for these grant programs, which has been great. I had mentioned 1,4-dioxane. About 100 wells in Nassau and Suffolk County have been impacted by 1,4-dioxane, where we would not be able to meet the new regulations without providing treatment. We estimated the cost of providing treatment about $840 million. To date, approximately 20 wells have treatment system online to remove the 1,4-dioxane. And we probably have another 50 that are under construction right now. The EFC came out with another round of grants, and I think the water supplies on Long Island submitted about 90 grant applications for that, with an estimated cost of the projects are about $450 to $500 million. So we're really looking for the state to continue with that water infrastructure grant program. It's been very helpful. But even with those grants, the cost of delivering water, we know the water rates have to increase about 50%. Most water suppliers on Long Island have already done that, but they will need to continue to do that because the type of treatment systems that we're putting in to remove the 1,4-dioxane, number one, they're very expensive to install, but more importantly, they're very costly to operate. Energy intensive, chemical addition intensive, so the cost of delivering water is just gone through the roof. And we need just to continue the grant program to be able to maintain affordable water rates across Long Island. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Senator Gaughran, Kaplan, Brooks, and Thomas. We appreciate the opportunity to have a few minutes with you tonight. We may be last as a panel, the 10th panel, but we may be first in your hearts, at least we hope. So Dennis did a great job summarizing some of the concerns that we have related to the cost associated with emerging compounds. The state legislature and the governor, they've been very supportive of providing funding to offset the cost for our customers, and we appreciate that. We're anxiously awaiting some of the specifics associated with the federal infrastructure bill, which we believe will provide tens of millions of dollars for water infrastructure and water treatment. We have the Long Island Water Conference and staff at the Suffolk County Water Authority sort of making the calls and trying to track exactly how those funds will be given out to New York State and to drinking water providers across the region. We believe it's mostly through the Environmental Facilities Corporation, and that's a good thing. And having this, I think Jim, you mentioned it at the start of the kickoff of tonight's forum. This is sort of a historic, unique opportunity for us, not only Long Islanders, but us in the water industry to say, hey, let's take advantage of the money that's available from the federal government to change people's lives. We're in the business of providing safe drinking water for the residents of Long Island, whether you're in Nassau County or Suffolk County, and we do that, and we take that mission very seriously. But in order to do that, we're going to need the assistance of the state and of the federal government. So there's hundreds of millions of dollars, as Dennis mentioned, $840 million in cost and continued operating costs just to treat 1,4-dioxane, PFOA, PFOS. The New York State, the Water Quality Council is presently meeting and deliberating to set additional standards to regulate other compounds within the PFC family. That's a good thing, right? We all appreciate that. And we think that if that's in the best interest of the residents, as far as health is concerned, they should do that. But in order to do that, it's going to cost all of us a lot more money to make sure that drinking water is safe. So our specific ask is, hey, keep the money flowing. Make sure that you do everything you can. The Long Island delegation that has the most significant issue, right, in the entire state related to 1,4-dioxane, keep that money flowing to Long Island so we have the funds needed to put the treatment in to remove those harmful compounds from drinking water. They don't have similar issues with 1,4-dioxane upstate. They do have other drinking water issues, but not necessarily 1,4-dioxane to this extent that Long Island does. The other thing I want to mention is, let's all remember, right? Let's all sort of take a step back and remember, infrastructure is aging. Long Island has been built out post World War II, right? Most of the infrastructure, including water, post World War II, where you're looking at 70, 80, 90 years old, 100 years old. Water mains being 100 years old, right? Treatment, not necessarily 100 years old, but that is extremely expensive, right? AWWA back in 2012 thought that there would be $1 trillion over the next 25 years for drinking water just to maintain existing service. Well, we're not just maintaining existing service, we're going above and beyond. We're developing new treatment, innovative new treatment, the first of its kind in the state to remove these harmful compounds. In order to do that, we need money and we need your support. And you've been fantastic. Jim, Senator Gaughran, you know this for sure, having been a former chairman of the Suffolk County Water Authority, you know our concerns very, very well, and we appreciate you and Senator Kaplan and Brooks and Thomas being advocates for us, but let's not let up. I would like to just take a second. I'll kick it over to Joe Picorni, my Deputy CEO for Operations, to talk about a couple of specific projects that are new and innovative that we think would also be good for our customers, but also for the aquifer beneath us. Joe, you with us?
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks, Senator Gaughran. Good seeing you, Jim. Thank you, Senator Kaplan and Brooks and Thomas, for having us here today. This is a great opportunity. Heard a lot of great ideas today. So, the projects that we have, we do a lot of different work at the Water Authority. Dennis spoke about the treatment systems. Jeff spoke about the infrastructure replacement. But we have specific projects that we've already applied for grants for that we'd like to make sure get funded and get funded quickly so we can execute them. We have one very large project in bringing water out to the North Fork of Long Island. Most of you know the North Fork of Long Island is surrounded very closely by salt water on both sides. A lot of the wells out there are impacted by salt water. There's a very extensive farming community out there, so nitrates and pesticides threaten all the wells out there. And because of the nature of the aquifer, it's very, very hard to find additional water to provide the residents out there with drinking water. So the Water Authority has a plan in place. We're putting together the plans for the construction of a new water main, almost like an aqueduct, a large water main that will bring water out from the Pine Barrens, utilizing that Pine Barrens pure water that we've always talked about and kept, for future generations. Well, we feel that there's a great opportunity here now to move that water out to the North Fork and use that for a couple of reasons, to actually supplement the needs out there for more water, but also to replace those existing wells that are actually, marginal in water quality. So they can be replaced, and actually by bringing water out to the North Fork, by importing water into that hydrogeologic system, you actually replenish the aquifer. So there's a sustainability component to the project, which is very, very important. And we think that it really adds something good to an otherwise very good project to begin with. So that's an example of a project we have ready to go. It's about a $30 million project. So like Jeff says, this is all very, very capital intensive, this work. This project is very, very expensive to put in. And, all of this stuff becomes more expensive as time goes on. Nothing goes down in price. So it's important that we get this project done as soon as possible, and increased funding would be a great opportunity. Another thing, this kind of goes on to what Dennis was saying, many, many years ago, we used to just pump water out of the ground. We didn't really treat it very much at all. And you would think that everybody today is drinking treated water, but believe it or not, in Suffolk County, there's still 30,000 people, 30,000 residences that rely on private wells to get their drinking water. And as most of you can imagine, most people that have private wells never really have them tested, or they have them tested when they move in. They think the water quality was good 30 years ago, it's good today. Well, we know that that's not the case. And we know that with these new chemicals, these new emerging compounds that we're finding all over the county in our public supply wells, they're present in private drinking water wells. So we would like to expand the system and connect up these people. Now, it's easier said than done. The estimates that we have from making connections to these 30,000 homes is that we'd have to put in almost 500 miles of water main. The cost of doing that today is about $600 million. So there's another great project for you. And these are projects that we can get going very quickly. The Water Authority has demonstrated its ability to bring water to areas where there isn't drinking water right now. We've done it recently over the past 4 years or so. So those are what you would really call shovel-ready projects. I want to bring something else up, and I heard Mark Herbst mention it earlier when he was talking about transportation funding. And he was emphasizing the formulas. And, like Dennis was saying, we get a lot of our funding through grants from the Environmental Facilities Corporation. And they have a ranking system where projects are ranked by a criteria that we're not always familiar with. We're not always privy to what the ranking is. But projects like replacement of water main, of which the Water Authority does about $20 million worth of every year, projects like that typically rank very low, and they don't get funded. And these are really the bread and butter of the water industry. And as Jeff said, much of our infrastructure was built out, around World War II. Much of that water main that went in the ground back around that time is all in need of replacement. Most of it is all antiquated cast iron construction. It's prone to breaks, it corrodes. It's really ready to go in a lot of places. The Water Authority could be replacing water main all day and never have enough money to do it. So those kind of projects, if the formula was changed or the ranking was changed in some way to emphasize these otherwise benign projects, this is all underground, nobody sees it, nobody knows it's there, but we all need it and we all benefit from it. And those type of projects, like I said, they're the staples of the water industry. They need to get done. They require tremendous amounts of money. And I think that if you're going to look for some way to help better fund the water industry, that'd be a great way to look. They're shovel ready. They can be done very quickly. I think they fit the needs of a lot of different priorities here. So that's about it.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
so much, Joe. Are we good, Jeff? Joe?
Jim, maybe one other thing that it
Yes,
wasn't
sir.
on the panel at all, but maybe from the water supply side, we are totally in favor of sewering as much of Nassau and Suffolk County as possible. You know, you see it in Newsday all the time. Only 30% of Suffolk County is sewered. So that's 70% of people who are on on-site septic systems. And people may not want to realize it, but that sewage is being discharged right to our groundwater. So from a Long Island Water Conference standpoint, we are in favor of funding going to wherever is necessary to sewer as much of Suffolk County as possible.
Okay, thanks. We're good, Jeff?
We're good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Good to see you.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I think it's been long, so I don't know if anybody has anything that we've left out that you want to bring in. Otherwise, I think we will just conclude this, and I'll ask Senator Kaplan, Senator Brooks to say some final words. But we appreciate everything. Lots has been said. I think going back to the beginning, Mark Herb said it best, that we've got to work with formulas that give Long Island not just its fair share, but but what we need and what we deserve. And one of the best things that I think we have going for us as a region is that our municipalities and our authorities and our agencies really do have these shovel-ready projects. So we're ready to pump this money out the door. You're going to have to deal with the paperwork. We try to do the best we can to complain to those involved with that, but that's often something very difficult to legislate. We just legislate the money, and I know the paperwork sometimes gets frustrating, but we want to continue this. The state budget just came out. We're just looking at it now. Let us know what we need to do specifically to fight and push up in Albany to make sure that we take advantage of this wonderful opportunity that the federal government has given us. The fact that New York is in a better fiscal shape than we've been in a while, despite this pandemic, and we could really take on some opportunities. And I think if we really want to focus on a symbol of infrastructure, Suffolk County Water Authority actually has an education center that has a museum, and they have an old wooden water main that came out of the ground once when that was being replaced. And David Manning, it came from your property years and years ago. So that's what we used to be, but we want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge here on Long Island and having infrastructure that works for everyone. And so I will, I guess, Senator Kaplan, do you want to go, and then Senator Brooks?
Sure, and I also want to thank everyone for appearing tonight and giving us a lot of their ideas. I think we learned a lot, and it is great always to hear from everyone, from all different panelists, telling us why they're advocating for their industry and their group. And we're going to work very hard to make sure that Long Island is not left behind. And you have our words. There's 5 of us, and 5 of us are ready for that big fight, or really just standing up for Long Island. With that, I'm going to say thank you and good night. Senator Brooks, you have the microphone next.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks to everybody that's participated tonight. You know, we're in a unique situation in this state right now. We do have access to money, and there is opportunity for more money. We've got to make sure we get our fair share. We got to make sure we prioritize right. I think, too, we got to be thinking about the future. You know, the early start of the discussions was things we had that are basically broken, our roadways, the rail system, et cetera. We've got to manage things better going forward. We've got to maintain the roads and replace them when they want. The water companies, obviously, and we've been talking about that here locally. You know, you don't see it, and water was simple, but you're right. Some of that stuff's been in the ground almost 100 years. And we've got to realize we got to get replacement systems to that and the rest. The opportunities for new business, we are so fortunate on Long Island, some of the educational centers we have and the wisdom that is within the walls of those centers that we can use going forward. We're going to be competing for this money. We've got to do a good job. We got to communicate, and we've got to also think about better ways of doing things going forward. I mean, let's get these projects, let's get these programs going. Let's take advantage of changing the way we get energy and you know, addressing all of our communities. You know, in my local community, Chamber of Commerce, I live in a very small town, Seaford. They have been trying to compete for some of these downtown programs, but it's not possible for them to do that. So we got to make sure with some of these programs, it's possible for the big guys to win it as well as the little guys. And sometimes we need to look at what the project is and realize, you know, if we got any wood, water piping still in the ground, let's put them on the top of the list, you know. But I appreciate all the time everybody's given us tonight. I think there's a lot more communications and discussions that we want to have, but let's go after it. Let's take advantage of the opportunities we have, and let's get those programs, get them running, do them as efficiently and quickly as we can, and make Long Island the gem of this state that it should be. So I thank you all very, very much for the time, and I look forward to working with all of you as we win one program after the next. Thanks again, and Anna and Jim, I thank you for coordinating.
Well, thanks, John. And I want to also thank our Senate staff, Donna, Rebecca, Chelsea, and Kevin from Anna's staff and my staff there. And if there are others, I apologize, but I know there was a lot of work put into putting this together. So again, and thank you all for participating, and we will continue this dialogue in the future. Have a good night.